the phone screens and the interviewing process. So I would say at least spend maybe 30 minutes or so preparing for each phone screen. Do the STAR method of answering questions about your experience. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we are talking about the second part of my job search process or applying for jobs video mini-series. Today we're going to be talking about the phone screens and the interviewing process. And first I want to give you guys some statistics. Like I said last time, I just went through this process, and for me personally, I applied to about 34 jobs, and from that I got 13 actual phone screens from the recruiters or the hiring managers, and from that I moved on to 8 follow-up phone screens with either the hiring manager or someone else that would be on my team. And then from there I moved on to 3 in-person interviews where I actually went into the office and had several rounds with different people, and that of course led to 1 job offer. So this is just an idea to give you guys of sort of, you have to, like I said, put out as many resumes as you can and apply to as many jobs as you can, because as you move down in the process, it's going to be less and less until you get hopefully that 1 job offer. So for phone screen, a recruiter will reach out to you or someone that works on the HR team or maybe even your hiring manager, and they'll say, thank you for sending in your resume. We want to speak with you about the position. And even though this may be with a recruiter that doesn't know the exact type of work that you'll be doing, and they sort of talk to a lot of different candidates, you want to prepare as much as possible because you can also use these notes and your preparation for the next stage in the job process. So I would say at least spend maybe 30 minutes or so preparing for each phone screen. The first thing I would say is to write a 5-minute or less pitch about yourself, because usually the beginning question is, tell me about yourself, or why are you applying for this job? And that's a good way for you to sort of sell yourself in a really quick way, maybe a few sentences about where you've been, what you're looking for, why you're a great fit, and why you're a great candidate. And I think when you say something really succinct, it might even just put the recruiter or the hiring manager in a good mood, because you already told them everything they want to hear, and the rest of the interview should go really smoothly. And then from there, take each bullet point that's in the job description or the job posting and make sure you have something to say about each one. Similar to how you're crafting your resume or your cover letter, you want to make sure that you have an experience or something to say about what they are looking for, because you know that the recruiter or the hiring manager is going to ask you those questions because they want to make sure that you're a good fit. So again, if they're asking something about mergers and acquisitions and you have some experience doing that in your previous or your current job, you want to make sure you can talk about it and be very specific about what you've done and how you can relate to that specific bullet point to show that you're a good candidate for this position. Also, be prepared to answer questions about your resume and about yourself. A lot of times they'll ask you, why are you looking for a job, or why are you looking to change jobs? And this is a tough question, because if you're looking to change jobs because you're not really happy at your current job, you don't really want to say that because you don't want to seem like you might be a difficult employee to work with, or that you have certain qualms about your work environment. So try to spin it in a way that's positive, or that you're just maybe looking for different experiences. Really play upon the fact that you did research into this company and why you want to work for this company. That's another question they're definitely going to ask you is, why this position specifically, or why this company? And so you want to make sure you have a good answer for that as well. If you sent them a resume, make sure you try to find out the exact resume that you sent them, because they'll probably be asking you questions about it and specific lines that you put in your resume. So for example, they're going to ask you about different experiences you've had over the past few years, and you want to make sure that you're able to speak about what you did succinctly and the companies that you work for. If you're coming out of law school, then obviously you're not going to have as much experience, but you really want to play upon any relevant experience or classwork that you've done, or really just how you as a person, you may not even have to pull from work experience, but maybe experience at school or working in clubs, or even just any sort of leadership opportunities that you've had. They might also ask you about salary expectations, and this is always a difficult question because you don't know what their salary offers are. So I would say definitely check GLASSDOor or other resources to see sort of what the range is for this position. And I also usually give them a range. You don't want to just say one number outright, but give them a good range. That way, hopefully you're within what they are looking for to pay for this position. And usually recruiters will tell you right away if you're off base or if you're within their range. And that is a good indication of where you might be comp-wise if you do get this job offer. So now moving on to more specific interview questions, I would say that GLASSDOor is a good resource to see what types of interview questions they might ask. For my position, which is a little more niche, there's not as much data out there. A lot of the questions that are on Glassdoor are geared more towards engineers or maybe salespeople, but I think that there might be, if you're at a big enough company, good questions that generally all the recruiters ask. For example, a lot of recruiters, no matter what job they're hiring for, might ask similar questions. I know at one company, they cared a lot about their values, and there was a certain question that they asked all of their candidates that you wouldn't have known if you didn't do your research. Another great thing that I think was very helpful for me is to do the STAR method of answering questions about your experience. If you don't know what that is, I'll try to put a link below about what the STAR method is, but basically you want to think of different situations, and for each situation you come up with a STAR answer. So that's the situation, the task, the action, and then the result. So the situation is, what was the situation? What was happening? And the task is, what were you tasked to do? And then the action is, what did you do in order to resolve and accomplish this task? And then what was the result? And the result doesn't always have to be favorable to you. They just want to know, what happened in the end. So even though you may have done all of this work, it may not have been great, or maybe you're negotiating a contract and the provision that you were fighting for didn't end up getting accepted by the other side. That's okay, because you still brought them through the steps that you went through and all the effort that you went through to try to get this situation resolved. And I went through maybe 10 or 15 of these situations, which sounds like a lot, and it is a lot of work and it requires a lot of thinking, but you can use this STAR method in all of the interviews going forward, because if you're applying to similar jobs, they ask similar questions. So because I'm doing in-house, a lot of what I do and a lot of the jobs that I applied to were negotiating contracts, and so a lot of the same questions came up of, was there a difficult customer that you had to deal with, or was there a difficult situation where you had to convince the other side of something, or what are some typical clauses that got negotiated? And because I was able to answer these questions quickly and I had a good formulated answer, it was much easier. So be sure to take good notes, write down all of your information, because the advantage of a phone screen is that you have your computer in front of you and you can refer back to your notes without having to look at the person in the eye. So it's a really great advantage to have. Now, towards the end of your interview, the interviewer will now ask you if you have any questions, and make sure you come prepared with at least 3 questions to ask them. And sometimes it's difficult, and sometimes it really depends on what position you're applying for and the company that you're applying for. But here are a few good ones that I thought were good. One is asking questions like, how big is the team? Are you augmenting the team? Are you replacing a role? And this sort of helps you understand more about the work dynamics, how big your team will be, who you'll be reporting to, and all of those types of questions. Obviously, this is a good question to ask both the recruiter or the hiring manager, because they both should know. Another question is, what challenges do you face on a day-to-day? I usually reserve this question more for hiring managers or people that are on your team, because a recruiter might have different challenges, but that's not really what you're interested in. You're interested more in the team that you're working on or the people that you're working with and what kind of challenges they face. And so it's a great way to see and get them to talk more about the work culture and the type of work that you'll be doing. A similar question is, what's a typical day like? And this is sort of the question that you can understand, do they work long hours? Is it stressful? Without asking them straight out, can I leave at 5 p.m. every day, because you don't want to start off a conversation like that. And so usually they walk you through their day, and they kind of explain to you, I get this many emails a day, I'm really I have a lot of meetings to go to, or my work-life balance is great and I leave at 6 p.m. every day or something. So that's a good question to ask your hiring manager or even one of the people that you'll be working with. And the last question that I think is good is, what does success look like in this job? And that's a really good question to ask the recruiter and the hiring manager, because it helps you to understand what they're looking for and what kind of person they're looking for. And you can use their answers when you do the follow-up email or even in further and subsequent interviews with people, because you now know specifically what kind of person they want to hire, and you can craft your responses to fit that answer. So the last thing you'll do after the interview is to ask for their email address. A lot of the times you don't have their email. If they're a recruiter, they probably already reached out to you, but if they're a hiring manager or someone else on the team, you may not have their direct email. I always ask, that way I can send follow-up emails thanking them for their time and giving them a little bit more information about yourself. You obviously want to keep these follow-up emails short and sweet, but if there's something that you missed in the interview, they asked you a question and you couldn't come up with a good answer, you might want to follow up with, further information, or if there's something you want to reiterate about yourself, or just to remind them that you are interested. And I know there was this whole article on LinkedIn about why this one lady thought that people who sent follow-up emails are really the ones that are interested in the job and really are gung-ho about it, because otherwise, if they don't care, they wouldn't send the email. And so I think it's just another thing to put you, in the right mind of the people, and it's another good way to follow up with recruiters sometimes if you haven't heard from them in a while, to just check up on things and see where you are in the process. The in-person interview is very similar to the phone screen because you're probably meeting with additional people on the team or additional people within the company, and they're going to ask you similar questions. So you already did a lot of the legwork. Now it's really just memorizing your answers because you won't have your computer in front of you. So what I do is I go through each of my answers and I say them out loud to practice going through them, as well as thinking about your 5-minute spiel in the beginning, really talking about yourself and selling yourself. And refining your answers, because oftentimes you're going to meet again with someone that you already talked to on the phone, but they might ask you some further questions or some follow-up questions. I would say that an in-person interview is definitely trying to get a cultural fit to see if you're someone that they want to work with, that they can work with every day, maybe even sit next to. It's really the chemistry between you and the interviewer and the person that's hiring you. So a lot of the times you may not even get a good feel for the company, and if you're not desperate, then you can understand that maybe this isn't the best fit for you either. So you get to see the company, the space, the office, and meet the people and really get a good understanding if you even want this job. Some obvious things are make sure you bring copies of your resume. Most people have them printed at this point, but you don't want to come unprepared, so you want to come with extra copies to hand them. You also want to bring some sort of notebook and pen to take notes on, if you want to ask for their email address afterwards. And for attire, make sure you do wear professional clothing. For lawyer interviews, we often wear a suit or at least a blazer with nice pants and a nice top. You want to look put together. Even if your company is very casual, you don't want to come underdressed, because it's better to be overdressed in my opinion, and really show that you put a lot of effort in and you care about this interview and you don't look sloppy. You might even want to practice, your facial expressions or your body language to make sure you're not stiff and awkward. But I know people understand that, it's stressful to be in these interviews, but really practicing these things will help you feel more comfortable. Also, my last tip would be to arrive at least 10 to 15 minutes early. You just never want to be late to an interview. I mean, obviously things happen if there's delays on the subway or if there's traffic, but you really want to build in enough buffer and cushion time just in case something does go wrong. If you need to find parking, if you need to find the office, what if you get lost? You just never know, and so it's better to come early and to build in that buffer time, like I said. Well, those are all of my tips for the phone screen and the in-person interview. As usual, if you guys have any questions, please comment below and let me know if you have concerns about upcoming interviews for yourself. If you're still in law school and you have OCI or on-campus interviews coming up, your interview process is a little different, and you probably go through these round robin where you might have several interviews a day. And in those instances, I would just try your best, and like I said, try to pull from experiences that you've had, not just in law school, but in other aspects of your life, and really just try to be that person that you can show you have potential to be a great lawyer or a great asset to that company or that law firm, because that's really what they're looking for. Another thing is that if there's something that you have a feeling they're going to ask you about or ask you more deeply about, do the research, put in the extra effort, and make sure you have a good answer, because most likely they will ask you that question. And that's definitely happened to me, where I was lazy and I didn't think that they would really go that depth into a question, which they ended up doing, and which my answer wasn't great, and probably why I didn't get on to the next step in the process. So make sure you're very thorough in your research and your preparation. Stay tuned for my next video, where I'll be talking all about negotiating and getting the job offer, because after you get that job offer, the work is not quite done yet until you sign your offer letter and get everything settled. So stay tuned for that video. As usual, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!